results are what we base our decisions on. When you think about it, we have 5 countries, we have a lot of interventions. How do we figure out what's working well, what's not working well, and what to change? Our results is what enables us to do that. When we get good information, when we get good data, when we get it at the right time, that allows us to see what needs to be scaled up, what needs to be reevaluated. All our work is based on markets, and markets are very dynamic, they change often. And it's through our results measurement process we are able to get all these insights very quickly that allow us to adapt. We are a learning organization, and our learning is based on the results that we get. And that intelligence, that insight is really what makes us a good program. That's how we create sustainable impact.
The biggest challenge in collecting data in Timor is the lack of a standard measurement unit. So households and in the local market, people sell products in buckets, piles, plastics, bundles. So for us, when we are doing our measurements, it has to be standardized. So we have to take our own measuring units to the households. We have to validate that information using the same common metric like a kg with information that we find in the local market. So there's a lot of validation and cross-validation that we have to do when it comes to collecting data.
The basic productive asset for any farmer is land, and in PNG, everyone owns land. So to ask them about it can be very challenging. It's not easy to find out. They will give you an estimation. We try to get as much as we can in terms of estimating. One of the main things that we use in the field is everyone knows about every village will have a soccer field or a volleyball field or a rugby field. So we ask them how use the size of the soccer field or the rugby field with their plots or their size of land that is under cultivation.
The main challenges that we face is one is collecting accurate data, because often people have a figure which is in their head, but it's probably not the realistic figure. So it involves a lot of probing and asking questions in different ways.
The difficulties of working with communities, there are 2 levels. The easiest one to talk about perhaps is the practicality of finding the communities, finding where they are located in Fiji and figuring out how to get there. In there also lies a lot of difficulties, logistical difficulties. Some communities are in very remote places. We need to make sure that we know what time of the year we're going so that we don't put ourselves at risk or our teams at risk because of rain or bad terrain or low light. But these are things that are, let's say, perhaps not unique to our work in Fiji. Other development programs also face that. But the second layer of difficulty is the one that I think is something that we have had to learn through experience as well as through research here, is that it's not enough to know where the communities are located. We need to know the social and cultural environment that surrounds these communities. A lot of these communities, they have their own rules, they have their own norms, and they differ. So the way you introduce yourself or the way you would figure out who is in charge of what or who is considered head of the community, that would differ from one community to the other. Each community is different. They have their time pressures, they have their calendars, they have their norms, and really to get unfettered access to individual communities, you need to spend a lot of time familiarizing yourself with that particular community, understanding them, giving yourself time to go in and do your introductions with time and with respect, and then you go in. And that second part has been much more complex for us.
Every ceremony that we witness is a critical component of the work that we do and entering the community. It's a process of seeking permission, reinforcing why we're here, allowing them to tell us what we can do and what we can't, and ensuring that when we leave the communities, we live in a good state and we are not seen as disrupting anything. After that is done, if it's a yes, then everyone will share a bowl of kava. So just say, you've done what the traditional protocol, you've done what you had to do. Now you've been given the permission to carry out what you're supposed to do. The women normally sit at the back. It's a very solemn occasion for the men. So normally you'll have the men come up and do the ceremony. Once that is done, subsequent activities after that, you'll see them more active, they can be engaging. But the kava in itself, depending on where you are, sometimes help you with the process, but in a lot of times it's can just make your head numb.
Different communities have different things that is common that you have to share with the household. The main thing is for Papua New Guineans it will be betel nut and smoke. It's like an ice-breaking thing. As long as you share something like that, it makes a connection between you and the household or you and that individual person. Once you share these things, chew, make themselves comfortable, relax, and that's when you can talk about anything and everything.
I've worked in development programs where you've gone in and you've spoken to beneficiaries and they give you stock answers because they think that's what we want to hear. But because we take a particular approach of making sure that we understand the communities, making sure that we introduce ourselves, making sure that we go through provincial authorities, that has really made us come across as honest brokers. We don't have an agenda in our communities. People feel much freer to just talk about, did it work, did it not work, because the response they get from us is not one of, oh, you shouldn't talk about the bad things, but really tell us exactly what has gone on. And in terms of just handling the different types of beneficiaries, particularly along gender lines, I think that's also where our improved understanding of communities and also our good research design ensures that when we talk to women beneficiaries, we are very confident that we get the accurate answers because the women beneficiaries sees us again as honest brokers and as somebody who doesn't endanger them in asking difficult or tricky questions.
The terrain in Fiji is very diverse. It depends on where we're going for field visits. When you're going into outreach places like Nanga, the terrain is really, really difficult because you're meandering into gravel roads that go up the mountains. And most of the time you're actually driving up and there's cliff on one side. When we go out to sea, there's consideration for the weather because sea can get really choppy. It can be really pretty wild out there, and it's a lot of distance to get to as well. And you're in the small punts.
In terms of the terrains we face for monitoring visits, we face roads which are gravel. You have to cross creeks and rivers, and then there's these clay soil roads which can get slippery with the slightest hint of rain. These are the main challenge in terms of terrain. We were collecting data and I think one of our wheels gave out. There was no phone contact. It was a rough area, but despite that, somehow we changed into the spare tire, and then we went forward, and then later someone got the car repaired when we got cell reception. So these issues arise. They're not often, but they do happen, and in that scenario you just have to react and react positively.
So one of the big challenges in agriculture or even in tourism, I think we face the same challenge, is the road conditions. It's very bumping and very windy, and sometimes it's very dangerous to travel, especially during the rainy season because the mud and very slippery.
The Lambasa Farm Fresh partnership began in 2014. This is a partnership where the partner required an expansion for the business. The bottleneck was at their facility, so for that they needed to expand. And with that, we partnered with them to increase their cold storage facility. And from there on, they've been able to source more from farmers and hence process more, stock more, sell more. This has allowed farmers to actually farm more and increase their profits. The two main challenges for collecting data for Lambasa Farm Fresh. The first one would be record keeping in terms of the invoices. It's very old school and manual, where we had to take it and manually enter it and process it. So that was the first challenge. The second challenge in terms of this intervention or partnership was finding farmers themselves, especially since there are no street addresses in this part of the country. The terrain is a challenge, cell reception is a challenge, phones are diverted. And terrain part again, to elaborate, we have to go through rivers and muddy areas, places where even the vehicle struggles, and we have to drive ourselves there. And the fact that the partner does not have an exhaustive list of farmers just makes a recipe for adventure.
First time I started long interview kare am gabadai gamla ice ko na lomare हमने जाता है NDF है कौन सी हम लोग ऐसा information मांगे ना information मांगे तो हम नहीं दिया हम सोचा हम लोग information मांगे कौन सी करे मांगे लो ना then after कुछ दिन बाद तब हम अच्छे से जान पावा कि कौन सी है MDF कौन सी है फाइंड आउट करा था हमारे पास अब और रिकॉर्ड कीपिंग हुई है भी कितना एक्सपोर्ट करे कितना वेजिटेबल बाइंग करे वो सब अब जैसे कोई भी अब जैसे कोई भी गवर्नमेंट मांगेगा ना हम वो इतना बड़ी फैक्ट्री बना लिया MDF के वो तो नहीं बना पाता ना काफ़ी हेल्प से फ्री फिर MDF दी से तब
We're all trying to make an impact in the community that we live in, and MDF allows you that opportunity. You're able to work with a private sector partner to influence a market change, and then you're able to talk to a beneficiary, a farmer or a producer, and you can actually see that change happen.
One of the cultural sensitivity is that you don't find females going out working in the field. The reason I enjoy this work is because you have the ability to change someone's opinion. You influence them to think differently, which gives them a powerful message. And probably the next time around someone comes, it wouldn't be the same gesture that they give out.
As a woman doing this activity, for me it's a bit challenging and exciting. Actually, not all of the women in Timor who have opportunity to go around all the districts in Timor-Leste. I often facing some difficulties. For example, male farmers, they don't really open to us. They refuse to give us answer. And then also sometimes they yell on us, they not respect to us. But we are trying our best to explain to them. For me, it's like if they understand clear what information or what the benefit by having this interview, I think they will understand.
There's a lot of conversation about the cost of doing results measurement. I think we should flip it around. What is the cost of not doing results measurement? And the cost of that is actually doing the wrong thing. And that ultimately has more effect on what you're delivering than not really devoting that time, that energy, those resources early on. So it's absolutely essential that we prioritize that, because that's the difference between good interventions and interventions that don't really lead to results. And that's the difference between delivering sustainable impact and not being able to get there.